So Julie and I met years ago, and Julie has been somebody that I have turned to for multiple times, just for insight and help and assistance on multiple things. So very excited to talk with Julie more about her practice and who she's working with and all of that. So starting off, Julie, I'd love for you just to kind of tell everybody a little bit more about yourself and what you do, and we'll go from there.
Cool. Well, thank you. And Drew, I want to just express my sincere gratitude for you giving me the opportunity to do this. So I'm
For
thinking
sure.
it's going to be really fun, and I'm excited to do it. So, yeah, I'm Julie Grabbe. My law firm is Grabbe Law Office. I am located actually in rural Kansas. So I'm in Hays, Kansas. So that is pretty much the middle of Kansas. We have more cows than people. So I started practicing law back in 2002 in downtown St. Louis, Missouri. I did insurance defense, work comp insurance defense for 11 years at a firm, at two firms downtown. And did that for a while, got really good at, doing one thing and doing one thing well. Um,
Right.
but met a farmer in a bar, and that farmer has cows out here. So in 2013, we got married, and I moved out here. I worked for Kansas Legal Services for 2 years, and got reacquainted with other types of law, right? The civil law, criminal law, all of that stuff that I learned about in law school but hadn't practiced for 11 years. So relearned all that. Went into private practice for a couple of years with a law firm here in town, and then ended up doing some child support enforcement, and then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, it was really interesting because we were in a situation where, we weren't having court in person. They hadn't yet transitioned us to the online stuff. And so we were just kind of pushing a lot of paper at that point, and everything was virtual. But it really gave us a chance to slow down, I think. And for me, I had a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old at the time. So I really realized how much I loved watching them learn and teaching them stuff. So then thus began a journey for me internally of how am I going to be a lawyer and do this other thing that I really love? Like, I'm
Yeah.
thinking I'm going to homeschool my kids. And I was like, lawyers don't homeschool their kids. Okay. But yeah, we worked through it. I actually filed for the LLC for my law firm in 2019, but I didn't fully step out basically until 21.
Okay.
Since then, it's been me. I'm a solo, and had paralegal here and there. So I've onboarded one recently, thank God. But that's the journey to my own law firm. And then when I opened my own law firm, I also decided I wanted to choose an area of law for myself that I loved, because as you get out of law school with law school debt, you end up taking whoever pays you. The insurance defense
Right.
sounded good because there was a paycheck. So did that, but really took a look at trademarks, and love the creativity behind filing for a trademark, making the arguments if there's an objection, and then getting to be really the cog in someone else's gigantic wheel, right?
Hmm.
So being able to help push my clients into that next level of growth. So that feels really good. It's really personally satisfying to me. So learned to trademark law, and that's what I've been doing for the last 5 years. So
Yeah, I love it. And I think your journey definitely, I think, resonates with a lot of people. Maybe not specifically on just like the law side, but just in business in general. Um, and I know like I had a business during COVID and then sold it and then tried to figure out, what's kind of the next move. And it was a weird time, I think, for everybody, but there was a lot of people like yourself, I think, that wound up taking that opportunity to evaluate, like, what am I actually doing and what do I want here? And I just think it's so I love hearing, like, I know we've talked about it before, but for everybody else to kind of hear kind of that journey of you, getting into your own thing. So um I'd love to talk specific. So like you've educated me so much when it comes to like the trademark side of things and like really a lot of the stuff that is entailed there. And so I'd love for you to kind of give us a little bit of in depth of like the type of business that if you're a business owner, like when should you be calling you, right? Or like what is the moment, what are the areas that somebody should really be thinking about, as they're starting their own business, or the name of their business and things like that.
Yeah, so I think this is something that's like overlooked a lot. And unfortunately, sometimes I get to have contact with people post problem, right? So whenever anybody asks me this question, it's not sometimes it's not something entrepreneurs want to hear, like you should be thinking about a trademark right away. But the fact of the matter is that you don't want to be infringing when you come out the gate, right? You don't want to open this business with this
Right.
name, do a bunch of promotion, and then get a cease and desist, or realize you're infringing on someone who has national rights to the name that you've just chosen.
Right.
There's a really easy fix to that, and I wish more people would do it. But really, it's the answer is get on with an attorney. A lot of attorneys will do free consults. If they don't do free consults, they'll do a not highly charged consult, maybe an hour or two of their time. But you can get a full search of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Database, which is going to go through it's going to go through all the state filings, right? So everything that is in the USPTO database from any state, and then you can
Mhm.
also do an AI assisted search with AI software, and it will give you those state databases. Those aren't necessarily composed in the USPTO. So you can find out if someone's already using the name, and just choose a new name in the beginning when it doesn't cost you a bunch of money. So that's something that I really wish more people would come to me for. It's like, I'm not going to make a ton of money off that, and that's okay. But you're gonna the return ratio on that one, I think, is just, it's a no brainer, because especially if it's like
Big
an
time.
attorney like me doing it for free. I'll do a knockout search for free for people. Not the full AI, because that one we have to pay for, but that's also not that much, right? So
Right.
doing that is just kind of due diligence before you start out. Once you get going, I think that if you are looking at growing your business, if it's something that you feel like, well, first you have to have interstate commerce. So you do have to have sales outside of your own state. That is a requirement. So if you are just selling in state, maybe it's not something that you want to spend money on, or maybe you want to look at a state trademark or something like that.
Hmm.
But what qualifies as interstate commerce, people aren't always aware of. So if you have a website and you're shipping it out of state, right? If you have a restaurant that's in a state, but people from other states are driving by and eating in it, that counts. So there's some nuance there on what's interstate commerce. But just having that trademark and having the knowledge that you have the rights to that name in the class that you've applied for, I think it gives you not only peace of mind that you're not going to have to rebrand, right? The cost of a trademark is not even close to the cost of a rebrand. And then imagine if you're going to get a cease and desist, because that cease and desist can be like, hey, stop using our stuff. We're really nice. We'll give you some time to do that. Or it can be like, hey, stop using our stuff. Send me an accounting of everything that all the money you've made using our name. And by the way, we're going to sue you. And right. So it can be really, really expensive. So just avoid all that stuff, and own
Big
your
time.
name to begin with, right? So and you're going to need it if you're going to franchise. You're going to need it if you have VC backing. You're going to need it. That's part of due diligence. So you have to prove that you own your name. So
Right.
yeah.
And I will say this firsthand. Julie and I connected it this last month on a project that I'm helping somebody else with. And exactly what she just talked about is like came up with a great name for the product, and the patents out there and everything. And it's like we were able to, before getting really into branding and websites and all the stuff that we're doing on that end, we were able to get ahead of it because there was some potential of down the road it could lead to some issues. And so that is like ultimately, like, that is, to me, that's like the biggest thing, is like you're offering a service that is invaluable, especially if you're trying to do something on a national level at all, right? And so I have literally firsthand experience in the last 30 days of exactly what Julie just talked about. So it is important. But the only reason, if I'm being honest, Julie, the only reason I even thought about that
Mhm.
was because of our previous conversations over
Yeah.
the last couple of years. And so you really helped me become aware of like what are those instances where, like, hey, this is important, and like you said, hey, this probably isn't applicable to your
Right.
business specifically. But um so I know we're talking about the business side of things, but I'd love to dig into like the your growth from a standpoint of like getting into your business, and some of the things that like maybe you wish you would have done earlier, or the things that you've learned just as you've grown your practice.
Yeah, I think so. When I stepped out of private practice, I had one foot in, one foot out, right? I had a W-2, and then I was like, well, I think if I'm going to do this, I might as well just like put all my attention into Grabbe Law Office, and we're just going to do it. And I didn't do the thing where you make sure the income that you were making is there before you take a step out. I was just like, we're going to do it and we're going to figure it out. It'll be fine. I think I probably would have been more strategic about that particular move.
Sure.
However, I think it did force me to like hustle. So I did
Yeah.
have to work hard at getting that income in. The first 2 years did really well. I think it was more than double my second year, which is not hard because the first year is the first year and I don't know what I'm doing, right? Third year was also pretty good. I had growth. I don't remember how much it was, but it wasn't like 50% or anything like that. And then the fourth year, I think I'm in year 6 now. The fourth year, we had a loss. And so I was like, oh God, and that was difficult. I think that like even knowing business law and knowing trademark law and knowing contracts and knowing all of that, it is not the same thing as knowing how to run a business. And that learning curve was a doozy. It was a doozy. So that's okay though. I loved it. I like learning about it. To be perfectly blunt, like last year, broke even and was very happy with that. Very happy
Sure.
with that because I was like, okay, here we go. We've got a system. And I really think that like I made the mistake early on of trying to do everything myself. And I think now understanding more about what is in my zone of genius, if you will, right?
Hmm.
What I'm good at, and then what I can let other people do.
Right.
So I feel like that's been a big one. Like I said, I onboarded a paralegal not too long ago, and I had one off and on, but I can really see now how important that person is,
Right.
and what they contribute to the business, and then also learning, I think, how to take care of them, right? My grandpa was a business guy. Everybody else in my family's employment based. So they like when I went out on my own, they were like, "What are you doing?" My mom was like, "What are you doing? I don't think this is a good idea." Like a year in, she's like, "Are you ready to quit yet and go get a job at a law firm?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "When are you going to quit?" I'm like, "I'm not." But
Yeah.
she's Japanese, and she comes from the mindset of lifelong employment with one company. They're very loyal. She worked 45-ish years at John Deere, and so that's where she comes from. And so for me to say like, I'm just gonna see what happens here and go out on my own, and that was not.
Big time.
Yeah,
And I would say to that too is like, so there's multiple points in there where I'm like, oh yeah, I've done that, done that. I make the joke all the time, like, yeah, I've quit 400 times in the last 2 years. Like I only quit for like 20 minutes at a time, but like literally, I mean, that's the growth part, right? And like I think also too, one of the things that a lot of business owners are dealing with just from the conversations I'm having is there's such a different landscape than there was 6 years ago,
yeah,
7 years ago, 5 years ago. Like even last year to this year, just with technology and the things that are getting pushed on everybody, everybody's attention span is getting shorter and shorter. And we're kind of almost in this like, it used to be, you'd watch videos or things like that and you kind of trusted that that was like a real person or there was really something behind it. And now it's like the first time I watch a video of anything, I'm like, okay, first, is that AI? Second, like, is this person actually know what they're talking about? Right. So you almost have to go do more research now to make sure that what you're hearing and listening to is actually accurate. Right. And so it's a different landscape. And I think to me, that's like the exciting, but also sometimes the frustrating part of growing a business right now is because you're trying to keep up with everything but also serve your clients
Mhm.
and also make sure you're giving them the best advice. And it's like it's just a different landscape right now. And so I think what you just talked about is like what a lot of people are feeling, right? Which is like, but it's also just growing your business. Like that's
Well,
the other part.
yeah, I
Right.
feel like, we right now are really focused on like the AI thing, right? Like AI is here, it is doing things like I've watched and heard so many podcasts and articles about how they're gonna AI is gonna make lawyers basically, redundant. We're not going to be necessary. And from my perspective, maybe that's true and maybe that's not true. For me, it doesn't matter because one, I'm going to try and keep up as best as I can with the technology to use it in my client's best interest. If there is a point where AI is better at filing trademarks than I am, it's not there yet. I think it might get there. I think it might get there. And if and when it gets there, then I just pivot. Right. And I think that's the thing that entrepreneurship teaches you so much is that you have to pivot. And I'm very comfortable. Like I'm very, very cool with the fact that like AI might take my job. And then I'm like, okay, well, then I'm going to learn something else and we're going to figure out how to do this differently. And it may be that I start going back to court and, serving people that way. It may be that I'm doing something. I don't know what that looks like, but I still think there's a place, right, for the connection. And so it's a concern, but I think as entrepreneurs, as long as we have the right mindset, we can figure out how to use it.
Right.
Instead of,
I think, I think you hit on something. I think that and I maybe have a different perspective on this than a lot of other people, but I think that AI is still very in its very infant stages. Like it's moving quickly. I catch myself like on my algorithm on my socials, I'm watching people that are 10, 15, 20 years more advanced than I am, right? But then I look at, my sister's algorithm on her phone or friends or things like that. And it's like, there's nothing that has to do with business and systems and technology and AI, right? So like to the average person that's not in this world, right? I'm also that much farther ahead. And so like to me, I think what your perspective there is amazing because that's really the truth of it is like I've pivoted 3 or 4 different times in the last 2 years because it's like there's been different things that have come up and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go learn this because this is kind of what the market is saying and what people need. And it'll continue to evolve. And so I love your perspective on that because I think that there's a lot of, I think eventually it could get to that point, like you said, like there could be a point in time where it's accurate and quicker, whatever that is. But the people that are aware of it and then can position themselves into different areas, I think once you kind of get far enough along in a business, you're like, okay, well now there's like no turning back at this point. So we're just going to kind of figure it out, So
yeah, I think for me too, like the thing that I like about being a lawyer is connecting with people and being able to translate the law. So like for me, being able to explain to somebody what the law says, first of all, because we love legalese and it sounds crazy all the time and what the hell does that mean, right? I like to be able to explain it, but I always tell people like you're not empowered with the law if you can't understand it, right? So if I can explain it to you in a way that you can understand it, then you can use it. And if you decide to use AI for that filing, go for it. That doesn't personally offend me, right? If that's what you feel like is the best for you, then do it. But I think there will always be a place for that personal connection. And that kind of explanation as far as translating the law into everyday language that we can figure out how to use. So,
well, and that's another point that I think will never go away is like, especially if you're in any sort of service-based business, right? Like, or you're working with other business owners, like there's always that personal connection. Like for me, it's like I use AI and I use a lot of different systems, but for me, it's the connection I have with the client that I'm working with where they know like, hey, yeah, Drew's using X, Y, and Z tools. But at the end of the day, it comes down to like, do they trust me, right? Or do they know that I have their best interest in mind? And like that as human beings, like I don't think that's ever really going away, right? But it's to me, it's how do you figure out how to leverage those tools to better serve your clients? And I think that especially from a service-based standpoint, like I don't want to talk to AI. I want to talk to somebody like you because I know that I may not be getting the right information and I don't know if I'm getting the right information or not. You know what I mean? So like having somebody like yourself that's like, wait a second, I know AI said X, Y, and Z, but like you're not even thinking about these 50 things on this side, right?
Yeah.
And it's not there yet. Maybe, like you said, maybe it does, but I think that personal connection is, unless you're selling a product like a coffee mug or something like that, that's a different story. But I think people want that, you know, and they want to have that human connection with people. So I think you're spot on with that for sure.
Yeah.
So the I want to talk to you a little bit. So obviously we talked about trademarks and things of that nature. And getting into your business, but like what are some of the things that like you see when working with certain clients, not just even on the trademark side, but also just some of the things that maybe you're seeing in the market? We talked a little bit about AI, but I'd love for you to talk just about some of the clients you've worked with and like some of the things that you've been able to like help them overcome and more or less get through.
Sure. I mean, I can tell you like a couple of stories about, some things that have happened. I have a client that has a federal trademark and he was doing a seminar. I believe you were at the seminar. And during the seminar,
Yes.
somebody had spoofed the webpage, his Facebook webpage. And it looked exactly the same as his. It had his logo in the background, and it was asking for money. It was actually the address was off by one space. And so it looked like his, right? People were commenting on it like it was his because it was only
Hmm.
off one space. So when we discovered this, um, we had the trademark for the logo that was in the background. And so we were able to send a message to Facebook and say, hey, this needs to come down. This is trademark infringement. Here's a copy of the certificate. Da, 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 da. It didn't take very long for it to come down. And we also asked the participants in the webinar to shoot off something. So actually, that was a really quick one that came down without a problem. But without that federal trademark, we wouldn't have been able to remove that. And that person, whoever it was soliciting money for services that my client was never going to provide because he didn't even know about it. So
Didn't even
I
know.
mean that's one really simple example I think, and that people don't really think about is that if you want something taken off of Amazon, Etsy, any of those platforms, Instagram, if anybody's spoofing your stuff and they're doing so in a way that's not going to be good for your business reputation, you need a trademark
Yeah.
to get it taken down. So that's one. Another one recently I had actually was a contract was brought to me that was clearly AI written. And I don't mind if you're gonna bring me an AI contract for me to review. I still charge what I charge to review it.
Sure.
And went through the contract and I was like, it just, like I said, right now it's not good enough. It will be good enough shortly, or whatever this person used wasn't good enough, right? Um,
Right.
it really wasn't. And I was like, well, let me tell you why it's wrong. And we did, maybe an hour consult, I think. And I was talking about all the different clauses that were in there, why it was incorrect, why it was incomplete, why it didn't make sense. And in the end, I left it to the client and I said, look, if you want to go back into AI and attempt to fix these, because she was taking notes on it. So I'm fully aware that you're probably going to go try to reprompt this. I don't care.
Right.
If that's what you want to do, you have at it. And I think it works for some people. That's fine. If you're comfortable with that, that's fine. This particular client took about 24 hours to think about it. And she said, I think I'm just going to have you write it. And I said, that's probably a good idea. Um,
Yeah.
so that was one big, and I've seen a couple of AI ones, and they just, I don't think the average person has the access to the LLM to the level that an attorney maybe has an access to. So
Right.
they're not getting the same output as maybe an attorney would if they were using AI to draft a contract. Do you know what I'm saying?
For sure.
So it's just it wasn't what they wanted, what they thought it was. So I am seeing that. I'm also seeing like a lot of operating agreements. People starting business without operating agreements. So they get the incorporation and they're like, okay, we're done. And there's absolutely no rules governing how their business works. Like, how are we letting new members in? How are we splitting profits? Where are we banking? How does all of this work if somebody passes away, gets injured, all of this stuff, right? That one is
Yes.
a big one. And I get it because like entrepreneurs, we're like, we're just gonna start this thing and roll. I totally get it. Um, you know, but that's the big one is I don't see that. And then usually they come to me because someone else has told them that like, hey, you need an operating agreement. And they're like, what?
Right.
What is that? So I get to explain that. And that's a lot of fun. So I see that a decent amount. I feel like I'm blabbering on, but
No, this is good stuff because honestly, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about is things that people are again, they see the TikTok video, the Instagram reel, something like that of somebody that isn't a lawyer, somebody
yeah,
that doesn't really know what they're talking about, that's saying like, "Oh, use this new AI widget to draft your whatever," right?
mhm,
And like at the end of the day, you wind up leaving yourself exposed when it comes to that. And a lot of times it's like one of those things where you don't put an operating agreement in place when everything's going well, right? Like the
yeah,
operating agreement is really in place like if you have partners for like when the things don't go well, right?
yeah,
And so like one of the things I've learned over the last 10 years is like we talk about the I try if I have somebody that is a partner, like I have a partner in the investment fund, like we talked about all the really hard stuff,
mhm,
like what happens if we disagree, who do we pull into that, like if we're 50-50 on on paper, like what's the tiebreaker, like what happens if something happens to you or something happens to me, like I don't want to be partners with kids, or you know what I mean, like
yeah,
there's so many of those things, but a lot of times we avoid those conversations because they're hard to have, but it's
yeah,
like you almost have to have all the really tough potential conversations, and that's really what the operating agreement is about. And you're actually able to write it usually on the front end when there isn't issues going on.
mhm,
And to me, if I can't have that tough conversation with a partner, I probably shouldn't be their partner, right?
probably, yeah,
Like that's a learning thing that I had, right? Like so I just wanted to add on, like you said you were blabbering, but like that's so imperative. Like even that piece right there is making sure that you have somebody that is looking over that and guiding that conversation, because yeah, when it's all good and you're making money and everybody's happy and everybody's working, you don't need an operating agreement most of the time because it's like everything's kosher. But like, man, when shit hits the fan, you got to have something to fall back on.
yeah,
Otherwise, it all falls apart. So,
yeah.
anyways,
I think I think
solid.
you said something good there too that I think most people ignore me when I say. So you say, there's two of you, or you're 50-50. How are we going to do a tiebreaker? I'm always advising people like, why don't you do 51-49? You can do 50-50 profit, but as far as decision making, can you do 51-49? Or can we put a clause in that says if you guys don't agree, we go to a mediator? We have to have some sort of another step
That's
there, because if we don't, how are we making that decision? Right. And nobody
big time.
wants to do that. Nobody ever wants to do that. I mean, I've had minimal people tell me that they're like, yeah, we're going to still keep it. Most people tell me we're going to keep it 50-50, right? They're not going to go
Well,
51-49. So,
and without divulging too much information, like that's the exact conversation I had with my partner Tracy in the investment fund, was like, yeah, we're here, but like if there's an impasse, like we also are very both aware of our strengths and our weaknesses, right? So a
yeah,
lot of times it's like we are constantly having conversations about, hey, what did you see something I didn't see? Like we have a good relationship, but we're also both aware enough to know like life happens, right?
yeah,
Like things that we didn't anticipate 5 years ago, 3 years ago, like 10 years from now, that's why you put that in place, right?
yeah.
So
It's your prenup. It's your prenup. Business
it's
prenup.
that's really what it is, right? But
Yeah,
it's I if you like I said, my one piece of advice is like if you can't have tough conversations with your business partner on the front end, it might be a red flag,
yeah,
right? Like you got to be able to have those conversations because you're getting married to that person. Like
yeah,
that's
yeah,
really what it is. And like there's and it's legally binding. Like you're in it. So
yeah.
um awesome. Well, as we're wrapping up here, Julie, I appreciate all your insight as always. I just I love the way that you handle like your clients, the way you deal with business. Like I appreciate you a ton. But I'd love to give you just a chance to add anything else to the end here, like
Yeah.
if you want to leave anybody with some more words of wisdom, that would be fantastic, and we'll wrap up here.
Words of wisdom. Well, I mean, I know your audience is entrepreneurs, and I think for me, this lifestyle, right? It is a lifestyle. Has really given me the opportunity to lean into the things that are important to me. I have two little kids, 5 and 7. I homeschool those kids right now while I have a law firm. But I'm able to make my schedule look like what I want it to. I'm able to flex the way I want to. And I'm still able to bring money in, right? And so, and to exercise that part of my brain that needs adult conversation and intellectual stimulation, right? So, I mean, I just really think that whatever that thing is for you, that lights the fire. I think that if you are able to cultivate the mindset for entrepreneurship, which means, yes, you're pivoting, which means you're looking at failures as information, as you're constantly learning because something else has come up, right? If you're able to do that, it's really rewarding. It's really rewarding. And I can really honestly say that I enjoy my life right now more than I ever have um, in the past. So this has been just a real gift to be able to learn how to do this and go through all of the lessons. Um, so yeah, I highly recommend. So
I love it. I love it. Well, again, I appreciate it. If there's anybody out there that is has listened to this, that is just, I would highly advise, going to Julie's website. We'll put it in the comments, and just having a quick conversation with her. So Julie, I appreciate your time today. I really
absolutely.
do, and look forward to continuing to work with you.
Yeah. Thanks for having